Welcome to part 2 of my Oppo BDP-103 hands-on. In the first part, I did an unboxing and took a basic look at the ins and outs and did some disk load times and Netflix and whatnot. But since then I got a few requests to delve a little deeper into some of the other options, from USB stick, playout to networking, and some of the setup options. So we'll take a look at some of those. In the first video I briefly mentioned the music, photo, and movie options. All three will look into the same place for content, but they will be specific on the file types that they look for. So the music is only going to look for music file types, photos, and movies, movie types. So I have a USB stick inserted into the front of the unit, and it has all three types, so we can play around here. The music files I just have one folder of some FLAC files, so we will see how those roll. This is the menu that comes up. It's fairly similar to all three of them. Let me just open the USB one, and it opens all the folders down here, and you can access your content through those, but you can also come up here if you have a list of multiple artists and whatnot and you want to find a specific one. This is probably the easiest way to go. So I'll just select artists, and it found the Sigur Rós tracks that I have on here. Just open those up. And I don't know if you can see, but there's a little icon next to the tracks, and it does say FLAC, so it will tell you what the file type is. It also opens the album art if your tracks have that embedded on there. If you're using a CD in the actual device, it uses Grace Note, and so if your album is popular enough, it should be able to find those through Grace Note. But I believe the files on here need to have the artwork embedded in them to show up. We can just select a track to play here. And it starts within 1 second or so. The first track of this takes a little bit to get going, but it does start in about a second after hitting start. Shortly after you hit start, it goes to this screen, and it'll stay on this until I believe till you hit a button or stop. You can fast forward in all the different levels of speed that the Oppo offers. Skipping tracks. It's pretty instantaneous. I'm going to skip ahead here to the end of this track, and so we can see what the transition is like. Great, we have to wait. Okay, speed it up here. There is a slight pause between tracks, and I'm not sure if that's just the way that I have them encoded on the stick or what. I'm not the most they're the best expert on this type of media playback. I'm a shiny disc kind of guy. So if you do have questions on file types and what it will play and the best way to encode and whatnot, your best bet's probably going to be to check out a forum like AVS forum. There's a thread on there specifically for the 103 that goes into great detail. Other users have posted a lot of content about what works and doesn't work and whatnot, including like Roku stick playback and all that fun stuff. So that is how it plays music tracks. And that's just one type that I had on the disc. I'm pretty sure everything will play pretty much the same, but no guarantees on that. So let me just go back out to the main menu here. Photos, pretty much the same. They load pretty quickly. Here's some photos I took in New York last week. There are some cool options though. If you hit the info button when they're playing, it brings up some of that stuff. There's also things you can do to affect the playback if you want to, if you're watching it in a slideshow. And there is some data built in that shows up. If you hit the green button, it tells you what camera and when it was taken and all that fun stuff. You can change transitions using some of the other buttons, like the yellow button down here changes transitions. So if you have a whole lot of photos and you like watching them on your TV while you're doing other stuff, you have the ability. Oh, here's an interesting photo. So I was testing out the Jaggies thing on the Spears and Munsell disc, and that there is the Oppo Jaggies test, and that is the PS3. So if you can see the difference, see if I can go back. So there's the Oppo, and the line is supposed to be pretty straight, which it is with the Oppo, but on the PS3 you can see how scalloped that is. So the Oppo pretty much wiped the floor with the PS3 and the Jaggies test on the Spears and Munsell disc. So, you know, it's a photo and now it's going through a camera, so take it with a grain of salt, but it was pretty close to my eyes with what that photo looked like. Alright, so now we'll go back to here and watch some videos. I only put a couple on here. These two are from my cell phone, and they will play, but it does not like the audio. Not sure why, but it's a cell phone, so can't be too choosy, I guess. This is my giant dog playing with a hula hoop. The file type, if I go back, was or is a 3GP. I don't really know what that is, but that's what you get. I did put the Windows Media Video unboxing video on here on the disc, and it loads and plays fine with audio. Oh, it's really low, sorry. The options that are available, so this is just the basic stuff you get. So yeah, that all plays fine. So now we can get into the networking. I have a Sony desktop in another room, and I don't really do a whole lot of the streaming from there, so I did set up a T-Versity media server, and then it also has the Windows or the Media Plus server that I think is Sony specific, I'm not sure. So we'll get into here, and you know, I haven't really set it up all too well, so there's a whole lot of menus to go through. So I will try to find some music to play here. I just dump everything into iTunes. Let's find something halfway decent that isn't going to scare everybody off. Oh, the tracking won't work. So it was about, you know, 2 seconds before it started playing. And then like the USB stick, it will go to here. I guess I don't have the artwork on that particular file. But like the USB stick, you can fast forward, skip to the next track. It starts playing pretty instantly. I don't know if other servers behave differently, so I can't really have put in much input on that. And one thing I have noticed is it will remember your last spot, which is kind of cool. So if I go back to the main menu, and then, you know, I go here, and then back out of this, and then go back, it'll load to where your last place was. Now it doesn't go to the exact track, but it goes to the same folder, which is nice. Not sure what more I can test on this. Those are all MP3s. The menus do take a little bit of time to load, but you know, it's not too terrible. But I probably won't be using this a whole lot. I have a Airport Express behind my rack that I can stream the iTunes directly to that from my laptop or anything, so I usually just use that and 2-channel to my processor, and I'm not too picky on streaming fidelity, so if I want really good stuff, I go to the shiny discs. I'm just backing out now. Right, we're back at the main menu and we'll get into the setup now. I will say that the manual goes a lot more in depth about all the options that are in setup, so I recommend looking into that if you're interested in the player to see what it can and can't do. I'll touch on some stuff briefly, but the manual is a lot better and it can be downloaded from the Oppo website in a PDF format. There is, when you're going through the menu, it will tell you down at the bottom some basic stuff about what you're adjusting, but like I said, the manual does a lot better job. So from the top, we have SACD priority. You can have it default to the multi-channel, stereo, or even the basic CD layer if you choose. DVD audio, you can have it default to audio or video if there's video on the disc. Autoplay mode for CD and SACDs to start when you insert them. And auto resume, pretty much all shiny discs, you can set that on or off to remember the last place you were when you stopped what you were watching or listening to. Now getting into the video setup, there are quite a few options to play around with. First up is picture adjustment. You can adjust each output individually as far as video settings is concerned. If I just select HDMI 1, you can see all your options for adjusting that output. And within each output, you also have 3 different modes, so you can set the output 3 different ways. If you have 3 different sources that you like to change the settings for, you may do so. Coming back out, the dual HDMI output. Now, you can always just use one of the HDMI outputs straight to your processor and then have that go to your TV, or you could go straight to your TV and not even use a processor if you want. You can always use one cable. But if you want to get fancy, you have dual display and split AV. Dual display will send audio and video to 2 monitors at the same time. Split AV will send video to output 1 and audio to output 2. Now that was done as a way to get around processors that weren't 3D compatible, but your monitor was. Now my monitor isn't 3D compatible, but I am still using the split AV function because I have found that it will send audio and video out both HDMI outputs at the same time, but only when the processor is turned on will it mute the audio on the TV. So if the processor is off, you're using HDMI output 1 to your monitor, you will get audio and video. I found this great late at night when I don't want to have all my equipment on. I can just turn on the TV, turn on the Oppo, and I can watch and listen that way. But then when I'm watching a movie and I want it loud, I turn on the processor. Using HDMI handshake, it senses that I'm using split AV and that the monitor is on, and it will mute the TV audio. I don't think that it's talked about in the manual that way, but I found that to be a great addition. 3D output on or off. I don't have 3D TV, so I just leave it off. If I do put it on, you can get into the 3D settings and see that you have a depth setting, and you can adjust your TV size. Then we have TV aspect ratio, which is self-explanatory. TV system, you can select NTSC, PAL, or multi-system. The Oppo will adjust and convert PAL or 50 Hz content to play on your NTSC TV. So if you have a disc from the UK or Australia or something, and you're in the United States, the Oppo should be able to play all the menus and previews just fine. Output resolution selects what the Oppo scales to. You got 4K and all the other options, including Source Direct, which negates any scaling and just sends the source material direct to your monitor. 24p out, on, off, or auto. DVD 24p conversion. This is very nice to have. Not all players will do this. It may only be Oppo's, I'm not sure. But it will convert DVD content that is film-based to 24 Hertz. Most DVDs are 60 Hertz, I believe. So this is very nice for film-based content. Be aware that content including like menus or TV-based content that wasn't shot on film could be herky-jerky. So you may need to adjust it on or off depending on what you are playing on a DVD. HDMI options, you can adjust the color spaces. On my monitor, I went through the Spears & Munsell test disc and found that RGB was the best for the Pioneer Elite. And then you have the 36-bit, you can change it. Who knows if it even does anything, I don't think it does. But we turned it on just because. And finally, you have display options. You can adjust where the subtitles are, on-screen positions, on-screen mode. You can display the time remaining rather than counting up on the front of the device. The angle mark, if you have some movie with multiple angles, and the screensaver if you want to protect your monitor from burn-in. And that, I believe, is the end of the video setup. Now into audio setup, we have secondary audio on or off. You can choose to mix the secondary audio in with the main channel if you so desire. HDMI audio selects how the audio gets to your processor. I just bitstream everything rather than have the Oppo decode. Coaxial, optical, same thing. As far as what sample rate you send, I just bitstream and my processor handles that. SACD output, you can change from PCM or to DSD. My processor can't handle DSD, so I just set it to PCM and it works fantastic. HD CD decoding on or off. I don't have any HD CDs, so I just leave it off. Getting into audio processing, I I lowered the brightness a little bit because the speaker configuration menu was a bit too bright on my camera screen, so hopefully you can see it a little bit better now. So getting into it here, you can see that if you were using the 7.1 analog outputs, you can adjust all of the speakers independently as far as their size, distance to the seating position, the trim levels plus or minus decibels. It has test tones for measuring the proper level of output. You can change the downmix mode to whatever your system is. So if you're stereo only, you can set it to that, 5.1, just left and rights. I don't really ever get into this because I don't use the analog outputs, at least in their full capacity. So I pretty much just leave everything as is and use the HDMI output for the most part. The manual does have a lot more information, so if you're using the 7.1 outputs, you'll definitely want to take a look at that. Coming back out, you can adjust the crossover to your subwoofer directly from the Oppo. Dynamic range control, auto on or off. DTS Neo mode, you can select it so you can turn it on, or music or cinema, to automatically output a simulated surround sound mix with stereo content. Most receivers have that already, so it's kind of redundant for the Oppo, in my case anyway. Output volume. The analog outputs the output volume of the analog outputs can be controlled through the Oppo, so you don't need to adjust with the processor. On the remote, there is a volume up and down which controls that function. Getting into device setup now. You have all your firmware stuff. It tells you what firmware you're on, including the main version, loader, and all that stuff. So sometimes they'll update only one of the several that are on the list. You can turn on or off firmware notification. There was just a firmware update the other day, and when I turned on the player, it notified me that I had an update, and so I just used the Ethernet and it updated in, I don't know, 5 minutes or so, and all was well. Remote control codes, HDMI control. I don't really use that, so I can't really expand on it much further than that. There's a huge paragraph and info in the manual though. Standby mode, there's energy efficient and quick start. Quick start mode will consume more power, but when you start up the player, it'll move a lot quicker. I just leave it in energy efficient. I mean, the 10 or 15 or 20 seconds it takes to start up isn't that big of a deal, and it consumes a lot less power when the player is off. Change the front panel brightness. Persistent storage for the BD Live stuff. You may have to empty that periodically. If you have a disc that won't play, sometimes it gets hung up, and persistent storage seems to clear that up when you empty it out. Your Netflix and Vudu options, you can deactivate, but that's about the only interesting thing in there. And restore factory defaults. Finally, you have network setup. Just tells you your IP address. You can decide what your player is called on your network. Turn off BD Live or turn it on. Turn on the network. You can turn off Grace Note if you don't want it to connect to the Ethernet or to the internet and find your disk art. Internet connection, you can turn on wireless on or off, and then you have the wireless settings when you do that. And also has a connection test, so you can test your connection. And that is about it for setup. I kind of glossed over a few things, but I think you got the gist of what it has to offer and can do. Alright, since we're here and before I go, I guess we could take a look at what I didn't get to in the first video. Start with Film Fresh. It's just another pay site where you pay for movies or television content. And it's not very cheap either. So I'll just try to find a video with a trailer so we can see how quickly it goes. $24 to buy that movie. It's ridiculous. So it starts quickly. Video quality is okay. Looks like it gets a little bit better as it plays. So that's that. I don't think I'll ever use that. But maybe you love it. I don't know. Go back out to the main menu. YouTube, self-explanatory. The menu system for it is weird. Normally when I use YouTube, I just use a search function, so I don't really have much use for the channels or how they're laid out. Videos play fast. I won't get into that here, but the quality on the YouTube videos is actually pretty decent from what I've seen. So go back out to the main menu. Pandora is cool, if you don't know what it is already. Basically you set up your favorite artists into a station, and Pandora selects other artists that sound similar and plays them with that artist. You can like or unlike songs, and you can listen to a quick mix of all the songs or all the stations together. So it's pretty cool. It's quick and easy. You don't have to set up any server or anything. It just streams it straight from the internet. So pretty great. And Picasa, it's a photo service which I don't use, so I can't really talk too much about that. So there you have it. Hopefully part 2 was okay. I didn't ramble on too much. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you have some really in-depth questions, I would suggest going to AVS forums and finding the thread regarding the Oppo BDP-103. There are lots of people posting their experiences, so probably have a better chance of finding your answers there. Alright, thank you very much. Bye.